Hi guys, I'll be your host Kelsi, and I'll be talking about the recent headlines in wrestling. So I'm calling this semi-regular video series Headlocks, Headbutts, and Headlines, all about the recent happenings in wrestling. So thanks to you all who are watching right now. Really appreciate you tuning in, and hopefully you will give me some of your opinions and thoughts on all things wrestling happening right now in the chat. I'll be glad to read some comments as this video goes along. So let's go and talk about the recent ratings war. I know a lot of people don't like to place emphasis on ratings, and neither do I really, but I think it is interesting to note the numbers sometimes. Just, it's fun to talk about. It doesn't really mean, anything monumental in the grand scheme of things, because the way they measure numbers today isn't really as accurate as it could be. So to me, I don't place too much emphasis on this. I just find it interesting. So NXT this week had a viewership of 795,000, and AEW Dynamite had 683,000. So clearly, in overall viewership, NXT won this week, or quote won. It's not really a war, but if you're comparing it that way, you could say that NXT technically beat AEW in the ratings. And so in the very prized demo of 18 to 49, NXT got a 0.27 and AEW got a 0.25. So again, NXT won in that very prized demographic age range. So, it is what it is. I find that quite interesting. This comes as no shock to me. NXT had a stacked card for their show this past Wednesday. So it makes sense to me that they drew in the bigger numbers because you had two huge title matches. You had, especially the one that everyone was really excited about, Shayna Baszler versus Rhea Ripley, which was an awesome match, by the way. I wish I was more attentive throughout the whole thing. It was really late at night when I was watching it, and I was getting tired, so I'd love to rewatch it and really see it with more crisp awareness of my surroundings when I'm not as tired. So thanks to you all who are filing in right now. We're just talking about recent happenings in the wrestling world. We're talking about how technically NXT beat AEW in the numbers this week in the ratings. Not really overall very important, but very interesting to note. And I will say again, like I said, NXT had a crazy good show. I really enjoyed it. We had Adam Cole versus Finn Balor, which was also a really intense, awesome match. I liked it a lot. And that opened NXT. So right away, NXT was bookended by some big, huge title matches. So I think more people were kind of wanting to watch that live. Now, I will say AEW still had a wonderful show. And if you guys want to hear my usual co-host, Paul, who's missing right now, but if you want to hear me and Paul break down that show, just check out our live review from last night, from Wednesday night, and that's on this YouTube channel that you're watching right now. So please check it out. And going onwards with more news in the wrestling world, this isn't a really big, huge news story, but DDP tweeted that he's getting divorced from his wife, Brenda. He asked for privacy and some prayers and for people to keep them in their thoughts. So that's kind of sad news there. I'm sure DDP will bounce back, but that's nothing easy for anyone to go through. And I'm a big fan of DDP. Very nice guy. I've had the chance to talk with him once or twice. Really cool, and I love his yoga. So it's just a shame he's going through a tough time, but he's really resilient and always bounces back against any adversity. Really strong-willed guy. So hopefully things turn around, he starts feeling better soon, and hopefully they both, him and his ex-wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, get through that with some ease and not too much pain. So the other big thing, as I kind of slightly mentioned, is that Rhea Ripley is the new NXT Women's Champion. And I'm really jazzed about that and very excited, I have to tell you. I think it's a wise decision because you had Shayna beat almost everyone ever. So she eventually had to lose to somebody. And I think Rhea is the perfect person for her to lose against. And just excuse me one minute. I could hear my dryer kind of loud in the background. I forgot to turn it off. I'll be right back. All right. Sorry, guys. It was kind of distracting. I apologize. I didn't even realize it was still going on. I meant to stop it. But anyway, so like I said, Rhea Ripley, new women's champ. So excited. I think it's the right move. And she has been so dominant against so many people. I just think she was a perfect opponent to push Shayna to her limits and then basically defeat her. So I liked that decision quite a bit, and I think it made for a great episode of NXT, and I'm really excited to see what she does as champ and all the new matchups we're going to get with her going forward. Joe says, and thank you for joining us, Joe, and also Dave in our chat, and thanks to everyone who's watching right now. Joe says he's sure that Baszler losing the NXT Women's title means that she's going and moving up to the main roster. You know, my co-host Paul and I, we talk about that on this week's podcast episode, which will drop tomorrow on this YouTube channel. We talk about how she probably will wind up on the main roster. But, you know, it does bother me, or not bother me, it worries me a little bit that, you know, when she had that triple threat match against Becky and Bayley, there was kind of crickets in the audience. You know, it wasn't very loud in there or exciting for Baszler. So it makes me worried. Is that going to be her reaction on the main roster? Is that going to be a normal thing? Or was it just the place that they were in, the town that they were wrestling that night? I don't know, but I hope that if this does mean that Baszler's moving up to the main roster, I hope that the main roster audiences will embrace her because she is a dominant force. And I think she's one of the best heels in all of wrestling and especially in all of WWE. And of course, I'm including NXT in WWE because they're under the same umbrella technically. So yeah, I think Baszler is a wonderful heel. She's very believable to me. If I saw her on the street, I'd be legit scared. So to me, that makes a good heel. And if she does move up, I see big things for her if they book her correctly. So it could be good things in the future for us as fans to enjoy seeing her wrestle all kinds of different opponents that she hasn't really had the chance to square up with on the main roster. So moving on to more big news, and still talking WWE here, New Day all have signed new multi-year deals with WWE. So this kind of squashes my little dream match scenario of finally eventually getting New Day versus the Elite. You know, if you guys are longtime viewers of Being the Elite, they have teased a New Day, the Elite matchup for so long, for years now, technically. Because, I mean, some of the oldest episodes, the Elite come out and they're wearing New Day shirts. Sometimes you see in some old YouTube, like WWE Backstage videos, like I know one, Big E is wearing an Elite shirt. So I love the little back and forth that they had on social media. They even faced each other in like a gaming convention tournament, and I thought that was really cool. It was like the only way we could get New Day versus the Elite, but of course it was outside of the ring. I really want to see it in the ring. Alas, because they all have signed multi-year deals, I don't think we're going to get that anytime soon, or maybe ever. In fact, Kofi even commented, you know, I'm going to be with WWE for quite a few more years now. I don't know how my body is going to feel in 5 more years. So I don't know what that truly means going forward, but I would just love it if he had one more year in him and that New Day would kind of go with an exodus, all of them, and just go to AEW just for like even a month. I wouldn't even care. I just want to see that one match. That's all. Thank you to everyone who's joining. The Brain Rain says, great job. Love your enthusiasm. Your knowledge is super. So sweet of you to compliment me. Thank you. I work really hard to brush up on my knowledge and to make sure I am apprised of the latest happenings in the wrestling world. I think a lot of good podcasts do that too. I've got a lot of friends who are just as knowledgeable as me. So props to all the podcasters out there working hard to bring you guys some entertainment. Not just me, but all of them. I really praise them for all the hard work. And thank you for your compliment. I really appreciate it. So now we've got some Impact news. Impact came to terms on the release of Killer Kross. I find this quite interesting. You know, his girlfriend, Scarlett Boudreaux, is going to eventually be in NXT/WWE. She has signed a contract with the company. So does that mean that Killer Kross will wind up in NXT? But you know, NXT especially is stacked and there's a ton of people there, and it's like it's going to come to a certain point where they're not going to have enough time for everybody. There's so many stars, and I'm talking about like really high tier stars, upper card stars there. So how can you possibly use all of these stars with the little time you have each week for NXT specifically? So to me, it's like Killer Kross could potentially get lost in the shuffle. And that's nothing saying against him. I'm saying they have so many people. Maybe it'd be wise for him to possibly go to New Japan, AEW. I doubt he would go to Ring of Honor, but that would be a steal for Ring of Honor if they could snag him. And Joe says he can't wait. He can't wait to see where Killer Kross goes. And me too. It should be really interesting. I can't speak to you. I've done like 20 hours of podcasting in the last 2 weeks, so I'm sorry, guys. It'll be really interesting to see where Killer Kross chooses to go. And I think it'll be very telling because whatever company he puts his faith in, it'll be great for that company. A great steal, really. Joe says he's one of his favorites. Hope he goes where he will be used to the best and to the fullest. And I agree with you, Joe. He's a really good card to have in your deck. And I think he wasn't really used to the best of his abilities in Impact. And that's quite a shame. So maybe if he goes elsewhere, they will use him to the fullest, and it'll be good for us as audience members getting to see him shine, and it'll be good for him too. So everyone will be a winner, except Impact, who lost out on having him and using that card that they had to the fullest. So another piece of news, I found this quite interesting. So Stone Cold recently said he thinks that Andrade is going to be a player one of these days. And that's literally the quote he said. That kid is a hell of a damn worker. And also, I really like this. He does talk about how Andrade is still working on his character, still needs to grow, but he could see him being a big star for the company in the future. And I like that he mentioned that. And then Ember Moon on Backstage this week, she also praised Andrade, and she said, he hasn't even begun to show what he can do, and he was huge and talented and did great things before even coming to WWE years before. So she praised him. She emphasized that he's always been great. It's not just now that he's showing what he can do. He's always been awesome. I love Ember Moon. In fact, she had some great analysis on Backstage this week. Backstage, I'm liking more and more. At first, I was kind of hesitant to tune in, thinking that it would just be a clip and recap show. And, if I watch WWE, why would I watch a recap show? But it's really turned out to be much more than that, especially with them acquiring CM Punk. Now, I will say, I saw the ratings have been quite low, especially for this past week of Backstage, which is bad news. We want the ratings to stay decent so that show continues to exist, especially with CM Punk being a part of it. I think is really neat, and I love it. So I hope that doesn't go anywhere just because of the low ratings. I've really been very surprised by how much I've liked it. And it's not just Ember Moon, it's everybody. Renee's got some great quibs. She's always really, really good at interacting with whatever guests are on there. I love when they all cut promos, promo school. I think that's really a lot of fun and always a really funny segment. Paige is so lively and energetic on there. Booker T is pretty funny. I just think the chemistry between all the revolving people on there and then the special guests who appear on there too is really neat. And also, I like how they're very real. They're not just like reading a script. I thought at first that they would just be like reciting stuff like, yeah, tune into this. We're the greatest company on earth. And in regards to WWE. But it's been much more than that, and so I've got to say, I'm pleasantly surprised. Dave is asking me, did the ratings not even rise with CM Punk? That's not a good sign, is it? They did rise with CM Punk. It's just this past week, it didn't do well. When CM Punk was on, it really did rise, but this past week just was a low set of numbers. And I don't really know what it was going up against. And again, you can only put so much stock in ratings. There's really so much you can base that off. Like, you can't put that much emphasis on it in terms of they don't count DVR numbers. It's very antiquated the way they measure these ratings. So, make of it what you will. But it is what it is. I just find it interesting to talk about for a little while, but I'm not going to, live and die by the ratings, the numbers that I read. Joe says he agrees Backstage has been really pulling him in. They should change nights. Tuesday isn't working out. Yeah, maybe Tuesday's just too hard of a night to run on. I don't know what night would be better for them, but yeah, it feels like people are not tuning in live. I know I'm not tuning in live because there's just so much wrestling that I'm watching every other night of the week and doing live shows and everything. It's like, I know people are watching AEW Dark on Tuesday and also NWA Power, but I haven't even gotten the chance to watch those. And so that's why I can't even watch Backstage live. I've just been able to watch it on DVR whenever I have some free time. I break up the viewing, but it's been nice, enjoyable overall. But yeah, maybe if they change nights, that would help, but I'm not really sure. I think people might have the same misconceptions or preconceptions as me and think, oh, it's just a recap show. It's just a clip show where they're putting over the company ad nauseum. But really, if they gave it a chance, they would see that it's quite interesting, and there's some interesting tidbits on there and Backstage little things that you would never know if you hadn't tuned in. So overall, I give it my seal of approval, to be honest with you. So if you guys are watching me right now and you haven't checked it out, why don't you tune in one of these weeks coming up? I think you'd find that you might enjoy it more than you think you would. So moving on with some of the news going around in the wrestling world this week, the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic is returning, and we will find out some of the competitors on the episode that airs on January 1st, the NXT episode. They'll be announcing some of the competitors then. I'm very eager to see who will be in that tournament this year, and it should be a lot of fun. If you guys have any speculation as to who could be in the tournament this year, why don't you shout it out in the comments, and I'll be happy to read it. I think it should really be a fun tournament. It's always a good classic every year that they've done it, and I've always enjoyed it. So I'm really looking forward to this year. So let's talk ROH. I did a ROH Final Battle review on this very YouTube channel that you guys are tuning into right now. And if you haven't watched Final Battle, I would suggest you go back and watch it because I really enjoyed it overall. And spoiler alert, not to spoil my own review, but I gave the pay-per-view an A. And I think that was warranted, even though I do tend to grade a little higher than most people. And I tend to be quite generous with my grades, as you guys have seen if you are a frequent viewer of mine. But I don't think there's anything wrong with that. There's so much negativity. Why not praise things a little extra sometimes, But I loved Final Battle. I thought it was a really decent show. But coming on the heels of Final Battle, we hear about so many Ring of Honor departures from their roster. And let's start with, I think it's a big blow, but you guys might not agree with me, Shane Taylor. So there was all those tweets that Joey Mercury, if you guys remember all this drama going on, Joey Mercury had been tweeting all this behind-the-scenes stuff about Ring of Honor and all the bad things going on behind the stage. He claims, they don't have concussion protocol, and Kelly Klein kind of basically agreed with it and confirmed that that is the case. Ring of Honor has yet kind of commented on the concussion issue and the protocol. Excuse me. But, they're trying to do as much damage control as they can because these Joey Mercury tweets are such bad press for them. And it's kind of adding to a negative perception that surrounds the promotion right now, which is quite a shame because I've always been, for a long time, a very big Ring of Honor fan, and they're struggling right now. Having said that, I do hope the wrestlers behind the scenes are being treated fairly and well, because all wrestlers deserve that. They put their bodies on the line for our entertainment. The least any company can do is take good care of them. And that's what I want for every wrestler because, they put their bodies through hell. I can't even imagine doing what they do, and I have so much respect for them. So hopefully things are better than what they seem behind the scenes at Ring of Honor. But yeah, I'd say it's a bad, bad blow. Shane Taylor, to me, was an underrated wrestler for them. He was a good upper mid-card guy, and now you're losing him. He was TV champ for quite a while. Joey Mercury tweeted that the release of Shane Taylor was on the horizon, kind of gave away that he would be released and that he wasn't even going to be told in a good amount of time before it happened. So that's how the rumors started circulating that Shane Taylor might be leaving the company. And now we find out it's true, and he did drop the belt to Dragon Lee on the show Final Battle. So the match was great, but it's just a shame. I love seeing Shane Taylor really get a chance to shine. And I do think something that you could praise Ring of Honor for is putting the belt on Shane Taylor. I think other promotions might not have given him a prominent spot on the card and given him a title belt to begin with because, like I said, I think he's just generally underrated, not just in Ring of Honor, but overall. He's a really good card and a good heel. And a good guy behind the scenes. I've interviewed him a few times and met him, and he wrestled a lot for my local Louisiana promotion, Wildcat Wrestling. In fact, he was champion for Wildcat for a while. So I got the opportunity to see him a lot more than even on Ring of Honor TV. I got to see him in Louisiana quite a bit and always enjoyed any interaction I had with him. So I'm just sad to see him go. But let me read his tweet where he talked about a new chapter. So Shane Taylor said, in 3+ years, idols became peers/rivals/friends. I went from dark match to being the match night in and night out. I made history and did it my way. Anyone who's ever watched, cheered, booed, bought a shirt, or supported me while in a Ring of Honor ring, thank you. #next chapter. And he posted some pictures of him coming down to a Ring of Honor ring, him with the TV title on his shoulder. So thank you, Shane Taylor, for all you did in Ring of Honor. We really enjoyed you. But hopefully he'll move on to a new company and will be treasured by somebody else, somewhere else, So another departure, which is huge for them, a huge blow. Marty Scurll, of course. We all pretty much presume that he's basically done with Ring of Honor. He had like a nothing match at Final Battle. It was just a tag match with Flip to open the show. Nothing of consequence. That's no surprise. Everyone knew his contract was up. What is surprising is where he showed up at. He showed up at NWA Into the Fire, their pay-per-view, and he challenged Nick Aldis. And a lot of people are speculating that their matchup could happen on the January 24th pay-per-view Hard Times. I think that'll be very interesting, very cool. Of course, they're paying tribute to Dusty Rhodes with the name of the pay-per-view, Hard Times. And actually, to go on a little sidebar, Cody Rhodes was asked what he thought about NWA naming their show, in reference to Dusty Rhodes and his classic promo. He said, Dusty's legacy is really hard to contain, and that's a good thing. Always nice to see his influence on the sport. So I like that. Cody's very supportive of anybody paying tribute to his dad, as he should be. He's a legend, and everyone loves Dusty. So, of course, they can't help but to kind of pay homage to him when they can. And I think this NWA show, especially if it's going to have Marty Scurll versus Aldis on it, will be very, very good. But very surprising that he didn't just pop up automatically in AEW. However, there is no reason to think that this could be more than a one-off with NWA. I think this could be like a one-time thing. He is good friends with Aldis, so it makes sense kind of working with him and helping the company that he's with. But I could still see him going to AEW, especially with all the teasing and little hints we were getting at in Being the Elite. So I still think that the door isn't closed to AEW. It's just that he's doing a little, what's it called? Where you go off the side of the road. A detour. He's going on a little detour first before moving to AEW, I think. And now I could be wrong, and he could be winding up wrestling at NXT, but I'd be very surprised if he chose to go that direction, considering I just think the roster's so stacked. Go somewhere where you're going to be billed as a top star right away, and AEW will do that. They love Marty. They're friends with Marty. They're technically his best friends. And the only thing that's in NXT, really, is his girlfriend, which, of course, is a big draw for him, I'm sure. But again, I don't think you're going to get billed the exact same way as you would if you were to go to AEW if you were him. Another surprising thing having to do with Ring of Honor and AEW is Colt Cabana. So Colt Cabana did have a match on Final Battle. He lost, and it was very short against Alex Shelley. In fact, I was very disappointed with how short the match was. I thought it could have gone much longer. It was a very technical match, and I think the crowd really wasn't into it, which is a crying shame in my opinion. So I was not happy to see a dead crowd, and basically there was crickets out there, and that's just ridiculous to me. Technical wrestling doesn't get a lot of appreciation anymore, but we're just in a different day and age of wrestling, I suppose. A lot of people love high flying. I do too. But, I can appreciate all styles of wrestling. I think there's room for everything. But speaking of Colt Cabana, yes, he lost. And then shortly thereafter, we get tweets of Ian Riccaboni saying how much he's going to miss working with Colt Cabana and how much he loved Colt and how they were best friends and how great of a time they had riding up and down the road together. Great tweets by Ian paying tribute to Colt Cabana. But then Colt makes his AEW debut on AEW Dark as a color commentator. That's a big deal, and that's a big blow. And the funny thing is, so at StarCast about, when was this? A month ago? Mid-November? I was interviewing Colt Cabana at StarCast, and MJF comes up and crashes the interview. I hit him with a piece of paper, which was a lot of fun. You guys can find that on this YouTube channel that you're watching right now. If you haven't seen the interview, it was a lot of fun. He also called me Four Eyes. Darn you, MJF, you fiend, you. But he asked Colt a really hard-hitting question, actually. MJF asked Colt, so when are you joining AEW? And Colt was like, you're asking me awkward questions. Kelsi knows not to ask me these terrible, awkward questions. So I think it was funny that MJF asked him about joining AEW, but at the time, there was no rumors about him leaving Ring of Honor. So he and I actually talked Ring of Honor and the locker room and how the vibe was in the locker room. He said it was overall positive and that they just had a good show shortly before I interviewed him. But, now we see that he's out of the company, and that really sucks for them. It is a blow, but at the same time, their commentary team is still strong because they've got Ian and Caprice. And Caprice is somebody, like I said about Shane Taylor being an underrated wrestler. I think Caprice and Ian too, in a way, they're both underrated commentators, and they really are gold together. Of course, when they worked with Colt as a threesome, they were good too, but just the two pair of Ian and Caprice is good too. They're marvelous together. They both have a wonderful yell when they get excited that I think is really natural and authentic. And as a viewer watching at home, it makes me more excited when I hear them getting so amped up. And it just feels like it's not forced. Like, I'm going to get some heat from this. So this will be my one controversial statement, I guess, on this chat tonight, is that I love Mauro I think he's a wonderful commentator for NXT, and I really respect his mental health journey, and I think he's so brave for going through that. But his commentary has never been my favorite. I really don't enjoy the Mamma Mia because to me it's like over the top and like kind of done into the ground. If you guys like it, that's more than okay. We could always agree to disagree, and there's nothing wrong with that. I totally respect you guys' opinion if you like him, and he's a good guy. There's nothing wrong with him. And he can be really good, and he has some great references and very knowledgeable. But overall, I do prefer Ian in terms of like excitement, because Ian gets a little corny and over the top, but I think it's in a good campy way, in like a natural seeming way. It just seems like it's Ian, his natural personality, not something forced or a script that he's reading. So to me, I like all commentary teams for the most part. I gotta say AEW might be my least favorite right now, but Ring of Honor is definitely my favorite as of right now, and they have been for a long time. I hadn't watched Ring of Honor in quite a while until Final Battle, and I was reminded how much their commentary rules, at least in my opinion. But NXT is good too. I love Beth Phoenix. I think she is wonderful. She's all these great little tidbits she gives about being a wrestler, and a very good psychological explaining about what the wrestler is going through, what the wrestler might be thinking, why they're going for a certain move, or stuff about their past too. I just really love Beth overall. I think she's great in NXT on commentary. Moving on with more news. Back to WWE/NXT. Kairi Sane. As we know, we all speculate that she suffered a concussion at TLC. She was kind of not fully there, it seemed like, in part of her TLC main event match. And that sucks because she's awesome, but she still mostly finished the match. Yeah, she wasn't really involved in the last 5 minutes, but she powered through for the most part. But WWE seems, and there's reports all over, wrestling news sites, that WWE has pulled her from all of the events for the rest of the year. Now, I say for the rest of the year. That statement seems like it's a long time, but if you guys know the date right now, we're in the end of December. There's not that much longer in December. So, she could be active the first of the year, which is not that far away. But as of right now, she's pulled. It's being reported from the rest of the events, which includes a Madison Square Garden show that they're going to have coming up. I think that would be next week. So yeah, she hopefully she's healing. Hopefully she's mending, and she'll be back soon because, I love her. I think she's wonderful. So we've got people in the comments, commenting on the things I've been saying. Joe is saying, do you think Colt is going to sign with NWA exclusively? So this is interesting to note. So I forgot to mention this. Thank you, Joe. You have actually reminded me. So I looked up because I actually didn't get to watch Into the Fire, the NWA pay-per-view. We were meaning to, but I haven't been able to yet. I will watch it eventually, but spoiler alert, this is a result from Into the Fire. Colt Cabana lost his championship at Into the Fire. So he's no longer a national champion in NWA. So I have no idea if he's going to continue working with NWA. I don't know if there were more angles built in at the end of the show that include Colt. All I know is that Colt lost the national title in NWA. He left Ring of Honor, but he made his debut on AEW Dark. So what does that all mean? To me, it means that he might be working more with AEW more so. I'm not saying the book is closed on his work with NWA. I just think it's a little telling maybe, or maybe it's a hint that he lost the title, that he might not be involved as much going forward with them. I don't know, but he could still make some guest appearances, because the cool thing about NWA, I think that you can wrestle there even if you're not signed exclusively with them. But I'm not sure on that. That's just me kind of, I think I read that somewhere, but I'm not sure. Another interesting thing, so Sting recently was interviewed, and he said, I do think my career is done, but I still think about the Taker situation every year. And of course, he's talking about Undertaker and how everyone wishes that Sting and Undertaker could have had their awesome WrestleMania match. Alas, now Sting is not really cleared to wrestle and probably won't be. And so we can't get that dream match that we've all been dying to see. But Sting did say, if there was a Taker situation at WrestleMania, I would listen to that phone call. But at the same time, I don't want to take that quote out of context. He was very, truthful about how he's pretty sure he's not going to wrestle again. So don't make too much out of that comment. I just thought it was cool that he even still thinks about the Undertaker match and wishing it could happen and all of that. And it's a shame that it hasn't happened and it couldn't happen when it technically could have happened. You know, Sting had that first match back when he basically had his first WWE big match. He could have had that Taker confrontation, but they didn't want to go that direction. This is a whole nother spiel that we won't get into now. All right, so my last piece of big news. That was my last piece of big news. I thought I had more. So it felt like I had a ton of news to talk about, but we're already done here. So just again, anything else you guys want to talk about quickly before I sign off? This was just a quick stream to get all the news out there, to give my opinion on what's going on. Like I said, I think the biggest blow to me on the news circuit right now is New Day signing new contracts. Yes, it makes sense. There's nothing wrong with them being in WWE. I like them. They've been a top tag team there. They've been booked well. And Kofi just had a championship run, which was awesome. I do think it's odd that they kind of pretend like that never happened. They never talk about that anymore. It's weird. Like, I can't believe you don't mention that he had, like, the main title. It's just like, oh, we're rewriting history. It never really happened. Typical WWE. That's a whole nother tangent. But, you know, they've treated them, for the most part, very, very well, especially these last few years. So it makes sense for them to re-sign. Just as a viewer, I want to see the Elite match. That's all. If I could just see it one time, as I said earlier in this stream, just a one-off is okay with me, you know? Another big thing I think that I was surprised about is Stone Cold endorsing Andrade so vehemently and so intensely. That's a big person putting you over right there. I mean, he's the greatest of all time, in my opinion, Stone Cold. So to get the thumbs up from him, I think that's a big deal. That's pretty cool. If I was Andrade, I'd be like, hell yeah. And it'd be really awesome to get praise from Stone Cold, literally one of the best of all times. So great. Same thing with Jericho. I think he's also one of the best of all time. So if Jericho and I was a wrestler and Jericho complimented me, I'd be on cloud 9. Derek's joining us in the chat. Thanks for joining, Derek. And thank you to all who watched right now. I'm about to sign off. Again, lots going on in the wrestling news world. If you guys want to keep up with all this stuff, you can read more in depth about everything I touched on WrestlingNews.co. Of course, that's the YouTube channel that you're watching right now, but their website is WrestlingNews.co. Go there, check it out. I work for them. I do live videos for their YouTube channel all week long. Look out tomorrow on this same YouTube channel. I've got my podcast dropping. What do we talk about in the podcast? We talk about NXT. We review the show from this past week. We talk about AEW. We review that show. We also talk, of course, Final Battle, which I have a whole single video about on this same channel as well. And we talk TLC and break that show down. And, you know, we did separate reviews for TLC, for Final Battle, for AEW, and we didn't do Raw this week, but we usually do Raw, just not this week. But we do separate videos for those. But even on our podcast, we talk about different stuff than we talked about in the live reviews. So even if you watch those live reviews or you go back and watch them, you could still tune in tomorrow to our podcast, and there'll be something fresh and new. But I think the best reason to tune into the podcast is because basically dropping midday tomorrow, we've got a whole Home Alone and wrestling discussion where we talk about which wrestlers would you guys recast as the Sticky Bandits, Marv and Harry. So which wrestlers would be perfect in those bad guy roles in Home Alone? We've got some great answers. They were so funny. So stay tuned to that. And Paul and I, my usual co-host, he and I give our answers. So that was a lot of fun. And that's dropping again tomorrow. Just a reminder of things that are coming down the pike. I'm going to have an either or video, which is kind of where I have to choose between two wrestling things I love. It could be two matches, two wrestlers, heck, even two wrestling moves, two wrestling shows. It doesn't matter. Even two promotions, whatever. The whole object is it's two things I like. I hate making decisions, but in this little video series that'll be semi-regular, I have to choose. So the next topic is Keith Lee or Matt Riddle. Either or. Who do I choose? I have to choose one. And every time I do one of these videos, I put out a poll on Twitter. So follow me at SuperKickinIt if you want to look out for these polls and vote in them. And also comment on the polls about why you chose what you chose. And I'll read the comments too in these videos. So stay tuned for that. That should be in a few days. That's dropping. Keith Lee or Matt Riddle. See which one I choose if I could only pick one over the other. Of course, in a perfect world, I like to pick both. But the whole point is I can't pick both in this series. It's like torture. That's why this show is great. It's like it's torture for me to have to choose between things I love. And finally, I hate to keep plugging, but if you guys love my content, please consider subscribing to this YouTube channel you're watching right now. It will really help me out. Show my boss that you like the content I'm producing for him, which would be great. And also give this video a like. Heck, if you like it enough, share it with your friends who like wrestling as well. That would really mean a lot to me. But you know, it does mean a lot to me. You guys hanging with me tonight. I really appreciate you all very, very much. Joe is saying heavy machinery would be perfect to be these sticky bandits. I could see that. Very good answer, Joe. I like that right there. Stay tuned tomorrow for our podcast for more Home Alone sticky bandits wrestler scenarios. You'll hear a lot of them on the podcast tomorrow. And again, thank you all. This has been Kelsi wrapping up the last week or so in the wrestling news world. Go to wrestlingnews.co for more. But for me, that's it. That's the finish. Night, guys.